So, how do societies actually change? I mean, is it a straight line, always moving forward? Or is it something way, way more complicated? Today, we're going to dive into a group of thinkers who totally flipped our answer to that question on its head. And drawing from the work of Brazilian anthropologist Luis Nilton Correa, we're going to meet the architects of what's known as neo-evolutionism. For ages, this has been one of the biggest questions out there. Do all cultures basically follow the same script, just at different speeds? Or does every single society get to write its own, completely unique story? This is the exact debate that sparked a huge shift in the world of anthropology. So, this new way of thinking started bubbling up around the 1930s, but man, it really took off after World War II. It just felt like the old idea that all societies were on some fixed, predictable path. It just didn't hold water anymore. The world was clearly way too complex for that. People needed a fresh approach, one that saw cultural change not as some rigid destiny, but as this huge web of possibilities. And this really gets to the heart of it. The old school thinking, what we call classical evolutionism, basically pictured history as a single ladder that every society had to climb rung by rung. Well, neo-evolutionism came along and just shattered that idea. It said, nope, there isn't just one path. Instead, there are many. It's more like a web of branching journeys where cultures can bump into each other, influence, and learn from one another. But here's the thing. This new movement wasn't just one single idea. It was actually fueled by a really fascinating debate. And at the center of it was a pretty straightforward question. What is the main engine of cultural change? Is it all about raw technological power? Or is it about how a society adapts to its unique local environment? And this debate was really championed by a whole crew of thinkers. We're going to look at 5 of the heavy hitters: Leslie White, Julian Steward, Marshall Sahlins, Darcy Ribeiro, and Alexander Lesser. Each of them brought something totally unique to the table. All right, let's kick things off with Leslie White. In his big 1959 book, The Evolution of Culture, White laid out this bold, really materialist theory. He said, look, a culture has 3 main parts: the social stuff, the ideas and beliefs, and the technology. But for him, it was technology that was the undisputed king. Technology, he argued, was the engine driving all cultural evolution. Period. He even turned this into a formula, which became known as White's Law. He argued that how complex a culture gets is a direct result of how much energy it can capture and use. He mapped out 5 stages. You start with societies powered only by human muscle, then you get animals, then agriculture, then fossil fuels, and boom, nuclear power. It's simple, right? More energy equals a more complex culture. Now, White's theory was powerful. It was elegant. But it also raises a huge question. I mean, if it's all just about capturing more energy, why are cultures so incredibly different from one another? How do you explain the unique way people live in the Arctic versus how they live in the Amazon? It kind of suggests the answer isn't some single universal law, but maybe something far more specific to a place. And that brings us to Julian Steward, who was kind of the main counterpoint to White. Stewart was really skeptical of any giant theory that tried to cram all of human history into a single box. Sure, he agreed technology and the economy were important, but he was like, that's not the whole story. For him, the real key was the one-of-a-kind relationship between a culture and its specific local environment. And what you get is this idea he called cultural ecology. Stewart's point was that a desert, a rainforest, and a coastline are obviously going to present different challenges, right? Different opportunities. So naturally, they're going to lead to different cultural solutions and different evolutionary paths. There is no single line of progress. There are just countless unique journeys, all shaped by the land itself. Okay, so we've got these 2 big competing ideas: this universal energy capture versus local environmental adaptation. But you know what? The conversation didn't stop there. Other thinkers started to chime in and ask, well, what if it's not either or? What if there are other dimensions to how cultures change? This is where Marshall Sahlins comes in. He was actually influenced by Leslie White, and he came up with this brilliant way to bring things together. He looked at the whole debate between White and Stewart and basically asked, what if they're both right? What if cultural evolution is happening on 2 different tracks at the exact same time? Sahlins called this general and specific evolution. Think of it like this. General evolution is the big picture, the main trunk of the tree, that overall trend of cultures getting more complex over thousands of years. But specific evolution is all the different branches and leaves. That's how individual cultures adapt to their own unique spots, creating all the amazing diversity we see. And crucially, this idea makes room for diffusion, the way ideas and tools can be shared and spread between all those different paths. Meanwhile, down in Brazil, an anthropologist named Darcy Ribeiro was developing his own theory, which he called the civilizatory process. He saw human history as a series of huge technological leaps that just kicked off massive social change. The agricultural revolution, the rise of cities, the industrial revolution, all the way up to the thermonuclear age. And finally, you have the really fascinating story of Alexander Lesser. Now, he was actually trained by Franz Boas, who was a huge figure in anthropology and somebody who strongly rejected these kinds of evolutionary theories. But Lesser ended up breaking away. He critiqued his own training and became a key voice for Neo-evolutionism. His journey was so important because he was arguing for this new way of thinking from inside the very establishment that was dead set against it. So you see, the crucial thing to get here is that neo-evolutionism was never some single, unified rulebook. It was a rich, vibrant, and often pretty heated field of debate that totally changed how we look at cultural history. The legacy of neo-evolutionism is really this mosaic of powerful, connected ideas. It gave us new tools to analyze what drives change, pointing us toward technology and the environment. It confirmed that there are tons of different paths to cultural development, and it made sure these theories were grounded in actual evidence from archaeology and history. But maybe most importantly, it broke us free from that old, rigid idea that the future was already written in stone. So if we boil it all down, what did neo-evolutionism really give us? Well, first, a promise to stick to real-world evidence. Second, the game-changing idea that there isn't just one path, there are many. Third, a sharp focus on the key drivers, technology and environment. And finally, it shifted our thinking away from certainties and towards probabilities, which is a much more realistic way to see the world. These thinkers gave us an amazing toolkit for understanding the past, but their central question is more relevant right now than ever before. In our world of AI, climate change, and instant global connection, what's the energy or the environment that's shaping our cultural evolution today? And maybe more importantly, where is it all taking us?